exercise. Gosh, everyone's got to stomp already. That's a maximum debate. Thank you. Okay. How are we doing on timing? We're doing all right. Nearly lunchtime.
Hello, everyone. It's my project. My motivation for this project is as a result of a deep political dissatisfaction. I literally cannot believe what's happened to the world over the last 10 years, 15 years. Donald Trump's elected as President of the United States. I've left school with almost £100,000 worth of university debt. I've got no chance of ever being able to afford a house, and I've just been told that my right to live and work in Europe has been taken away. And the benefit for that is kind of yet to be discussed. It's always brought back to people saying, you must believe, you must believe in the power of the weak. For my manifesto, I was looking into housing and asking what we can do as an architectural profession to combat that issue. To summarise my findings, if you're producing housing that's beautiful, say for example, you've got a living room that's got, that you've designed it in such a way as to ensure that lights entering the living space 24 hours a day, or for the full daytime, it doesn't matter. It makes no difference. If it still costs £500,000, people still can't afford it. You've missed the point. You're not hitting the nail on the head. Whilst researching the housing crisis, the fact shocked me, and I'm scared by what's happening. 21% of 18 to 44-year-olds explained that they delayed having a family as a result of not being able to access affordable housing. 1 in 5 people said bad housing contributed towards poor mental health. That was contained within a study completed by Shelter. More 30-year-olds, this first time ever, more 30-year-olds than 20-year-olds are having children. And this is the first time it's ever happened in history. And one of the big factors is, again, people not having access to affordable housing. People don't feel safe. And the final nail in the coffin for this being the problem that I want to tackle is that the government is spending £34.4 billion a year on subsidising landlords through the housing benefit. That means money is going directly out of the government's pocket into the pockets of private landlords. So the government is subsidising private investments in individuals via second homes. It's insane. So, looking at agency within the world of architecture, we are a small cog in a big development machine. By continuing to act as architects in the way that we do in the UK, we can't impact the housing crisis. If anything, we're complicit to it because we work for developers who make money out of this housing system. There'll be lots of examples of places in the world where housing crises have been solved. My favourite one is Singapore, and the answer was renationalisation of housing. I think it was around the 1930s, 1940s. The housing in Singapore was described as human warrens. It was, sanitation was a huge issue. People were living in shanty towns essentially, and the government stepped in and people were advocating for a higher percentage of GDP. They turned it up to 8% of GDP that was poured into house building, and that over a few decades solved the housing crisis completely. They got to the point where 90% of people within the city owned a home. So the solution is renationalisation of the housing problem. Creating a system where supply matches demand, not a system that relies on artificial inflation of land property prices, which is then used by developers to increase profits. So to achieve renationalisation of housing, I think we need to garner political support. To do that, we need to change public opinion. And to change public opinion, we need to stop acting like architects. We need to look outside of the role of architectural profession. And my proposal is that we advocate for change. There are some examples of this. A favourite of mine is Jamie Oliver's Feed Me Better campaign, in which he highlighted some of the issues found within school dinners in the UK, and he investigated it and made videos about it. He spoke to people outside of the world of the catering industry, and it changed. For all of a sudden, parents, PTA meetings, are asking head teachers what's in their schools, what's in their children's school dinners, and it changed the entire system. We look back now and laugh. The figurehead of that campaign was the Turkey Twizzler. My proposal is an engaging video series which looks at transcending the incestuous world of architects, engaging beyond the construction industry, hoping to engage public and control the dialogue around renationalisation of housing. I promised Steve that I would record a video and show it today, but having had the biggest hand in less than 24 hours ago of the year, I haven't had time. But I put a storyboard together that explains kind of an approximate dialogue of how this sort of thing would work. And there are some real heroes of mine, people who use satire and comedy to create something that's entertaining but that can cover serious issues. And I think that's what the architecture profession is lacking. That's what we're incapable of achieving. We are very inclusive, and I think my proposal looks to step on some of that. I'm a little bit hesitant about talking you through word by word of the storyboard, but it sets out an initial proposal, kind of an initial establishment shot that looks at not just the locations but the politics, the finances behind it. Goes on to some of the history around the housing crisis, and there's loads of things to take the piss out of. It's hilarious. So housing pop culture, I think property shows and the way that they talk about housing and describe housing is something that's genuinely quite funny. I think political. There are a lot of political figures who are definitely up for grabs because of their horrendous views. We're going to go into I'm going to move into some developed understanding about that and then talk about my proposals and my political aim. But it is, a satirical series that I'm talking about, which looks at humour, satire, and assertiveness as kind of three cornerstones to achieve something that is not being done. I've looked everywhere for something similar to this, and I just can't find it. So in that respect, it's a new proposal. So yeah, any questions?
Yeah, loads.
Yeah, good. So it's inherently architectural, it's not spatial. One of the big issues I think I'm going to have is finding a way to shoehorn this into the constraints that sit naturally around the modules that we're going to be doing.
Well, I don't understand the time frames. So what type of, you're saying it's a film?
Yep.
Like, talk us through that more. Like, when does it exist? Next week? Is it a thing that gets, like, what is the...
So,
what is the plan of works for this thing?
So, having spoken with Steve last week, Steve's of the opinion that it should be something quite organic, quite vloggy. But my concern is that there are some advantages to that. It is very quick to produce. You can speak to a lot of people, but I think if we move into something that's more polished, more well produced, better researched, we can reach more people. And an assessment, a metric to understand whether this is successful or not is to look at the amount of people that it engages with the dialogue around housing in the UK. But to come back to timescales, this is something I would like to see a draft version come out of halfway through next year, quarter of the way through next year.
So, what is your personal hire goal, like, as in, when you leave at the end of next year, instead of having to come back and repeat the year because you've done a film that's full on its arse, what are you aspiring to do?
Well, my higher goal is to advocate for renationalisation of housing in a meaningful way, in a new meaningful way, that genuinely engages people, gets a conversation started. Yeah,
but how are you going to feed yourself?
What do you mean?
Do you have a trust fund?
No.
Okay, right. So, when you leave, most people get a job or some kind of employment. I'm not trying to be...
No, it's good.
Provocative. So, you're being provocative, I'm being provocative.
Yeah.
Right? So, most people in our cohort of people need money to live.
Correct.
That's quite normal. So, most people, when they leave, need to do something to get money to live. Most people feel like because they've been trained, as you're saying, and got this debt accumulated around training, that they would like to use their expertise that they have to earn as much money as they can within something that pleases them reasonably to put a roof over their heads and put food on their
I'm quite content with my job in the world of architecture.
Yeah, so I'm just saying, so then what type of work are you going to be doing when you leave? Like, do you want to set your own practice? Do you want to make buildings? Do you want to make... I understand where this is going.
For a long time I kind of flirted with the idea of development and architecture and mixing those two roles.
When you say development, you mean speculative, making money?
Speculative property development. And there's good money in it. But my theory was that a new wave of developers might be able to like make a dent into the housing issue that we have in the UK. In reality, you're not even going to begin to touch the side. You're not even going to produce 0.01% of the housing required to tackle the issue. But not that. I'm happy in the world of architecture. I think it's a really good place to be, and I feel fulfilled. But I feel like the architectural profession doesn't speak to people in the way that it should, and that's what this proposal adheres to, kind of addresses. But that I'm not looking for a career in TV. That's the point. I'm not looking for that. But I do want to do something over the next year that will make a difference.
Okay, so like, are you sorry, I'm really just trying to understand.
Please.
So you like, in 5 to 10 years' time, are you running for RIBA council because you want to be like, I mean, a position like that where you've got a genuine opportunity to make change, yes, I would love to do that. I do think the RIBA is... Do you think George Clark is one of your heroes?
I love what he does.
Okay.
I don't think he's asking the right questions, but I do love what I think he gets people talking about the world of architecture, which is what we need.
So you would like to be on the telly?
I'd like to talk to people.
So you would like to be on the telly?
Well, now for this proposal, if this
I think it's fine. So like, my aspiration is to be doing DIY SOS in 20 years' time. That's fine.
Fine. I'll be a Cornish Nick Knowles. Let's do it.
Okay. So this is important because you're so personally invested in this, but there's a huge lack of clarity.
Okay.
Your thing is all about plain speaking and communication.
Yep.
But I'm totally confused.
I will say,
and I'm belonging to your tribe of like understanding sort of where you're coming from. So that's where the audience.
So I want to get into it. I want people to understand why the housing system is so fucked and the impact it's having on people's lives. Churchill was right. The buildings that we made are now shaping us. Yeah. It's shaping us in a horrible way.
But I think okay, my concern as the person who oversees the course and your pastoral needs is that it's a very earnest, worthwhile intent. On the one hand, it's a lifetime's work, and on the other hand, you could make a YouTube channel or choose your social media platform and just do this shit anyway, and do his project or his project or his project. Like, to make it the project, I actually think isn't enough because it's too thin, and like no one's going to solve the housing crisis because it's just political wash around the fundamental economic structure that we have built globally in relation to power and land.
No, I disagree with you because you're saying there's no way to solve it. I'm saying there is. And the way to solve it is to garner public support for a political shift towards renationalisation of housing. That's the purpose. We need people on our side. We need politicians to understand that there are votes on the ballot paper for this, for sorting out housing. £23.4 billion a year is spent in housing benefit that goes directly into the pockets of landlords. Why is that? That's 1/5 of the NHS annually. The NHS is 125 million.
Okay, so can you imagine a position where you work in housing policy?
I did think about attempting to infiltrate the GLA.
But like, do you want to be a civil servant?
No.
Why not?
Because you're not allowed to express yourself politically.
Okay.
I think as a student, you've got an edge, and you've got not a naivety, although some people would call it that, but an ability to do something that wouldn't be allowed to be shown on the BBC, or you can do something that wouldn't be shown on Channel 4, and you can be really edgy, really deeply satirical, political, aggressive, annoyed. I am those things, but I've got an objective.
You're also terribly nice and very well spoken.
I mean, I was gonna do it next.
Okay, well, I think that I am not at this point in time convinced.
Yeah. Okay.
But there is a way forward.
Yeah.
I think the way forward needs to come from you. And it would be healthy for you to acquire a level of perspective on what you're really saying. And to further visualise, like, you need to know more where this is going for you, because otherwise it could just fall so fundamentally on its ass.
It's been a wonderful experience storyboarding to attempt to understand the components and how they're going to fit together, but it needs to be digestible by people not within the world of architecture, not within the construction industry. It's not for them. Everybody in the construction industry knows and understands the problems.
Have you heard Peter Buchanan saying about? I remember him chuckling in a lecture saying, actually, the best thing you could do is do a Pixar film. And I kind of get that. What I appreciate you're saying. We've got this problem. The LSA has asked me to, really make meaningful impact, and actually the best way is making a film. I still think there's ways of. I think you could present spatial propositions through this film, as well as it being political side, Jonathan Pye, satire. Sorry. I think there's still ways of threading that through and doing a little bit of both. Mm-hmm. But I also think, I don't know if you've made films before.
A little bit.
I think you should definitely go as high as you can on the political side. As speak to Joseph Henry at the GLA, and then speak to documentary filmmakers, and I think you need to get that done sorted, work out how much a camera's going to cost, and actually see if you can do it.
It's fucking expensive, and that's what terrifies me.
On
your
behalf,
behalf,
I'll find a way.
Renting a good quality film camera for a day can be hundreds of pounds.
I mean, I've got access to cameras. I've got a writer, and everybody in my practice knows Storyboard. So there's this web for you.
Okay, so I think then you just
do a business plan, get it.
Yeah, go on, Steve. I think I need you.
Well. To rehearse the discussion we had last week, I said, well, the course you're on is a course called the London School of Architecture, where there is an assumption that the people studying postgraduate architecture are interested in the topic of the design and proposition about architecture. And my suggestion to you last week was that I think how we communicate architecture is or talk about architecture is very, very interesting. And my suggestion at the time was that you should not be going to do a Channel 4 documentary for all reasons, but actually an iPhone blog of your endeavours to solve the housing crisis as students at the LSA would be unbelievably powerful and honest and true, and all the rest of it. And because I think there is, as part of the advocacy thing, imagine the Tories standing up against you saying, what, back to those bloody horrible council houses like they built all around Glasgow and all the rest of it, which were just absolute sewers of crime and drug taking. Is that what you're advocating? We don't think we should go back to that. Margaret Thatcher, she was the one. Let people buy the council houses, that's what we want, not your bloody rubbish about national, etc., etc., etc. Yeah? So you need to be able to describe an environment that you have in your head, and that's the designer's role. That's why I think you should do both. Myself.
Yeah. Get something running concurrently. Just in quick response to that.
Because I think using the technology in your pocket would be a very powerful thing to push that as far as you go, rather than saying, let's pretend we're Channel 4, because we're not.
But I think, what you haven't done is the survey, okay? So you're relying on us, the audience. You haven't done enough work, okay, on this, right? You're going to have to work twice as fucking hard. If you want to do this, you've got to be twice as stubborn and work twice as hard as everyone else. Because you're saying, I want to break new ground. Okay, in order to break new ground, you've got to work your bloody arse off. Yeah. If you're lazy and you still want to do this, it will fall on its arse and you will fail. Fact, I'm saying that now. Yeah. Okay? So if you are so stubborn and single-minded, which I'm feeling there's a little bit of streak in that, as well as being, cheeky chappy, that you can, you have to come with a whirlwind of energy, and you have to stop with the rhetoric and only provide the evidence. Okay, so this is the last time where you say, I'm going to do this. Okay. Each time you just come with it. Yeah. And if you don't come with it, that's an automatic self-critique of the fact that you're already behind, because you're saying you're going to do things in the future, but you haven't done it. We just want to come and see it. Okay.
Just 2 quick points.
Wait, I'm going to finish. So that's one thing. The mechanism of communication this will not be successful if it's aimed at Channel 4 and BBC. That's dead as a means of communication. That is one particular kind of sector. This needs to be much more alive, much more of now, much more of your generation, much more progressive. It can then be repackaged and cited on the news, or it can be repackaged and cited within the more traditional formats of digestion of news. But it needs to be a much more alive thing, and so it needs to use a format that is at the finger point of that. So Instagram video, or you tell me, right? Because you're more or podcast or whatever. Like, it needs to sort of sit within smartphone generation.
Yeah, absolutely. And comedy is the hardest. Don't try to do comedy.
No, not comedy. I think satire.
No, satire is bloody hard.
But as soon as it's a clinical architectural video, people are going to turn off. They're not going to be engaged, and then all of this is a waste. But of course, to stand there and say, "Oh, it's important to be funny. Don't try and be funny." It's not about trying to be funny. It's about being serious. It is possible.
Well, let the satire just go out of your natural process would be my advice to you, rather than say, it's going to be a funny show. I don't think it's necessary. It might not be a funny show. It might be a deadly serious show.
Intentionally, I didn't say that.
Yeah. I think you should do both. I think you should definitely design this new world and make a video about it and stick it on.
Sorry, I remembered my point because you interrupted. Sorry, you interrupted my flow. Which you can laugh at, but it's quite hard as a panelist to keep your thoughts. So it is important to respect when people are kind of giving you time, that sometimes you do just calm down a little bit and let them kind of finish. And I know I'm internal, but when there's external people, that's often kind of respected. Yes. Anyway, so the point I was going to make is there's already quite a lot of brilliant work done in film media, often by artists, so people like Mark Leckie, people like Jeremy Deller, which takes this in a much more rarefied way and makes work about that, but that's to a different audience. That's to the audience of people who consume rarefied art culture. And you're saying, well, I want to normalise it, and I want it to sit alongside the pixel art. I want it to sit alongside the consuming of garage band culture or whatever. I think so. If you repackage what's already known, what's already out there, you did a digest of the stuff that we, the privileged few, already know and already can buy into. Then what read the LRB, then what from London Books, then what read the Times Education Supplement, the educated elite, right? To whom, and the champagne socialists, to whom this is, evidently, completely obvious. Then you need to show that work that you've done, that research, which takes that, digests it, and then say, this is how I repackage and repurpose that for my ends and means by doing this, and this is the communication stream that I want to do. That would be my suggestion. Because then at least people give you the respect for the research you've done to get to that point, and then they can critique whether your output and your suggestion of this mechanism of communication is sufficiently talking to your research that you've done. At the moment, what we've got is a provocative wind-up on what you're going to do and a lot of rhetoric. You've got to move out of the rhetoric and get to the evidence and the stuff on the wall point. I am not precious about media, about whether it's moving pictures or whether it's paper. I am, however, pragmatic, and I know it takes twice as long to do moving pictures as it does to just chuck something. So that's interesting.
There was a big hurdle, and it's important that I had your blessing, and I felt like I would potentially be wasting my time. If I were to turn up for something, if you turned around today and said, no, you've wasted your time, I do appreciate how long it takes to do it, and that's why I haven't produced something yet.
It's a big risk. You risk failing. I'm going to say that now.
Yeah, I understand.
So if you want to take that risk, fine. If you fail, you get one chance to resit it for free. So something you can know about.
A quick
like,
way
we
you
don't
could
need to-
you could have a go at like trying to make a videographic impact. You could have a go at collaging some of these, even making a bit of a reflection on the George Clark and the DIY SOS
Yeah.
and like
But just
start
you,
collaging that
just
stuff.
collage, like, just make a moving picture
Test it.
out of shit that already exists. Just
Yeah.
edit it. Don't film new stuff. Just do a Mark Leckie. Do you know his work? Just take shit
Michael-
that already exists
Uh-huh.
in the world and mash it together as a collage, but of moving
Then that would
pictures
convince.
to tell this narrative. So you introduce your brief through borrowed material. Boom, 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 boom.
Ask Michael Craddock in the year above. He did a very in like a week. He did a video. He narrated it. He used found imagery
Yeah.
from about 100 to 200.
I'm just
not
looking at
200
Mark
years.
Leckie.
And it was so impactful
Okay.
because he used found imagery and then narrated a different narration on the
Yeah.
top, and it was a really good
Yeah,
introduction
yeah,
to the
yeah.
project. You could start with that and then vlog.
I still think you should go.
An architectural proposal that runs concurrently.
I think you should. I think it'd be much more interesting.
My-
Because I don't know what the future council house looks like.
But also, people love models. Like, there's a whole, like, if you want to get into it and be kind of funny, then why not take the whole crazy world of, like, the 1 to, what is it? 1 to 20, what's the scale? Of, like, railway modelling. And that funny sprinkly grass that we all really want to buy when we go to the model shop, but we know we're architects, so we can't. You know? And why don't you make this crazy world of, like, or Lego or something, you know, use
because there is,
a
the council house,
digestible
you know,
scale
it-
that's
you know,
normal
my
to
grand-
us.
My grandparents,
Duplo.
you know, that was what our class lived in.
Yeah.
You know, well, it's not for us to own now. You know, that's for them. There's that stuff, but there's also a whole the council house as this nightmare of a social deprivation and heroin addiction and people
Yeah.
throwing themselves off balconies and all the rest of it. That's got to be overcome as well. And that part of that is the description of new housing. I mean, look at the Abercrombie film about the post-war reconstruction of Plymouth. The way we live now. Do you know it?
I've not come across it yet, but I'm
It's
sure.
on YouTube.
Yeah.
Absolutely extraordinary. Where he was dreaming about the future of how people will live.
Yeah.
And that's powerful stuff to work with.
Okay, we've got to move on.
Sat out and watch it.
Absolutely.
Do both.
Okay.
Do both. Mate.
Great. Thanks for your time. Cheers.
We do not want to ever hear you talking about a film, not showing a film.
No,
though,
I've got-
because then
yeah,
we've
yeah.
failed, right?
That's it. Yeah,
Totally.
yeah.
So
I
the
get it.
next time you